Hey there, Anna. So more essays from you. Let's see what you did. The first one is for the restaurant. Let's see what you wrote. Dear Sir or Madam, I am writing to complain about the unpleasant experience I have recently had in your restaurant. I'm referring to the sushi restaurant Soho, located at Pobeda 21st Street in Moscow. Okay, fine. I booked, and let me tell you why I booked, because you very clearly delineated when this event happened, and therefore you have to use the past simple, not the present perfect. Okay, so if it's clearly something in the past, then you have to refer to it as the past simple. I booked a table for my date and myself, or I booked a table for my date and for me. I guess I booked a table rather for my date and myself is what comes to my mind immediately as an option, but maybe me would be okay too. At 8:00 p.m. on Friday the 16th, when we arrived there right on time, we were told that the table was not ready yet, so we had to wait another 20 minutes. When we were finally seated, the waiter took our order. We waited nearly an hour for the food to arrive. My date ordered sushi, with salmon, no fish. However, there was confusion in the kitchen, so and it should be in the kitchen. And she was served a meal with tuna fish instead. I would like to point to the fact that your restaurant is known to be one of the best in the city, and many friends have recommended it to us. Therefore, I strongly believe there was some kind of misunderstanding that night. Being such a respected place, I believe you will not charge me for the unpleasant evening we had that night. I therefore suggest that I be given a full refund of the money I paid for. All right, fine. I await your prompt response. Here I wanted something else, either an and or furthermore, something or else like a semicolon. So I wait for your prompt response. I await your prompt response, not for. I await your prompt response, and my contact details are attached to the letter below. Now, you ended your letter regards, but this is inappropriate here because you started your letter, dear sir, madam, which means you have to end it yours faithfully. You don't have a choice here. Whenever you don't know the name of the person you're writing to, you must finish the letter yours faithfully. Regards, yours sincerely, and all this stuff is just for when we know the name of the person we're writing to. Okay. So, also, don't forget you don't need a full stop here. You didn't need it, so I hope you won't write it in the exam. It says here that it took you 23 minutes to write this. It's a little too long. I want you to keep this in the future to less than 20 minutes so that you have enough time for your task 2 as well. So, that's what we'll look at next. Task 2. Nowadays, people are influenced by fashion, particularly when choosing clothes and hairstyle. Is this a positive or negative development in your opinion? To what extent do you support this development? Now, these kinds of questions, I always find them to be really rather tricky. Because it's very easy, essentially, to repeat yourself. In other words, if you say it is a positive development, then you have to explain why it's a positive development. And if you explain that in one paragraph, then how are you going to extend and support this paragraph? So these are always really tricky, and I always tell students to kind of approach them with care. So let's see how you dealt with this. The issue of fashion has grown in importance over the last few decades. Models, brands, and popular trends seem to influence people more and more nowadays. Personally, I believe that fashion has more drawbacks than benefits. The assessor will discuss both sides using examples from American television and Harvard University to demonstrate points and support arguments. Now, okay, the way you dealt with this is fine so far. I am concerned. I am wondering how you're going to develop it. You just said you're going to discuss both sides, and you think it has drawbacks. It's possible that this will be okay, but let's see what you did. On the one hand, there is ample evidence that fashion is essential to human beings. Firstly, it contributes greatly to the creation of beauty in our world, the spiritual value that is so important to many. All right, how? My first question is, how does it help contribute to the creation of beauty? Explain it to me, support it with an example or some sort of an explanation. Secondly, the last decades are characterized by models who demonstrate to youngsters that beauty can be expressed in many untraditional forms. Take for example American television without the, which produces world famous models. I would have said here world famous, so with a dash, world famous models like Tyra Banks and Beyonce. By inspiring people to be themselves through those role models, fashion creates a positive influence on them. Alright, so essentially you're telling me that fashion is positive. Okay. Let's see. On the other hand, however, the negative impact of fashion is undoubtable. The major reason for that is that advertisements, billboards, TV shows, and radio commercials all say the same thing. Be beautiful, be fashionable. People become obsessed with hairstyles, clothes, and makeups they wear and spend too much money on them, sometimes prioritizing the wrong things in life. A study by Harvard University School of Humanities showed that 40% of Americans with a bank overdraft could avoid it simply by minimizing the unnecessary fashion-related purchases. Moreover, it is an undoubted fact that fashion has a major devastating influence on us. Let me look back at the question. To conclude from the examples and arguments given, I firmly believe that the disadvantages of fashion outweigh its advantages. Careful with your typing. Unfortunately, it is predicted that in the future, the impact of fashion will continue growing and even expand to other spheres such as sports, players, reality stars, or even children's '(s) television shows. Okay. Where are you? There you are. Now, basically, I'm trying to figure out to what extent did you answer the question? That's why I'm kind of like, thinking about it. Okay, so essentially what I want to do is I want to go back to the questions, which before we started correcting this essay, I told you were complicated. So, to the first question, how did you answer it? Is it a positive or negative development? You're basically telling me here that it's a positive development. But then in the second paragraph, essentially you're telling me you don't support it. No, that's if I'm really stretching. Now I'm stretching to kind of find these. Because what you really did was you took this essay and you basically made it discuss both points of view and give your opinion. That's essentially how you dealt with this essay. In other words, I'm not 100% that you really addressed the questions as they were phrased to you. Is it a positive or negative trend? You had to answer it. Yes, it's positive because it can do X, Y, Z. And then, to what extent do you support it? So, despite the positive aspects, I am not in favor of this trend because A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay? So, you need to be a little more distinct and a little more specific with your answers. Because the way you've done this, it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's almost as if you were answering a discuss both views and give your opinion kind of essay. And that's not what was given to you. So essentially what I want you to remember is to spend a couple of minutes before you start writing looking at the topic, looking at the question exactly as it's asked of you. The way the question is phrased will basically explain to you how you're supposed to answer it, okay? So when you have two questions like this, the general rule of thumb is to spend one paragraph on each question. And you have to directly answer each of those. That didn't really happen here. So what you need to do now, obviously, is you need to correct these essays, add the errors to your error correction list, Send them back to us. Think about what I told you in terms of really analyzing the topic. Okay, and then I expect you to come back with new essays with these corrected, your error correction list, and I'll be looking forward to see what you have to say next.